This is Danielle Sanders here with the Chicago Defender exclusive. Today I'm talking to the Henry family, which includes Black Ink Chicago star Ryan Henry, his sister Jillian, and his mother Yolan. Today we're talking about the impact that domestic violence has on families. As many of you know, Ryan's sister, Nova Henry, and her daughter, Ava, were brutally murdered by the hands of her then ex-boyfriend, who is since now serving a life sentence in prison. For the family, the healing process has been ongoing. And today we're talking to them about the impact of domestic violence on their families, how they're healing, and what they're doing to become advocates for victims and survivors.
Again, like I said, a brief synopsis. We are together as a family and friends to make awareness about domestic violence is based on our family member Nova, my daughter, her daughter Ava. They were murdered in January 2009 due to domestic dispute. So we know that we had to go forth and do some things positive from there.
One of the things that I think is a common misconception, it's something I dealt with, I know it's something your daughter dealt with as well, is that the dangers that are present usually come more so after someone leaves. So a lot of times people, especially online, will say, well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just get out? And the reality is in my situation and in your daughter's, that was when the drama really kicked in to high gear. So can you speak to, these common myths that, are very commonly heard on social media, especially when it's in the news? Just leave, as if that's all that it takes. It takes a lot more.
Right. If it were that easy, men would be gone at the same time. Unfortunately, what it is it takes a lot of courage. Sometimes they have to sneak out. Sometimes they have to escape, like they have been a prisoner, and actually leave. And after that point, the person who is their perpetrator sees this as, something they're not going to deal with. If they're not going to have you, then no one's going to have you. So they will harass you. They will stalk you. They will talk bad about you. They will try to defend your character in any kind of way, just to make your life miserable after that. And sometimes after that, the threats follow up with physical threats as well. And then sometimes ultimately leading to either jail time or death. I can let others speak on that as
well. One of the things that just over the years, even in our personal conversations, and I'll address this to Ryan and Jillian, if you don't mind, domestic violence affects so much more than just the victims and survivors. It affects your families for quite a while because it's a trauma that you experience. So for the two of you, how has this affected you and impacted your life?
For me, given over time, when we starting a career, starting a social business and growing socially, it's allowed for me to, as I expanded, it's allowed for me to really realize how many people, not just women, but mostly women. Like for me, I didn't know how many women had actually dealt with some form of abuse, domestic violence. Initially they'll tell you that it's about 1 in 3 women. When over time, I've just with so many women that reach out, given my situation and given our family's loss, and then to hear so many stories, for me, it's pretty much like 2.5, if not 3 and 3. Every woman that I've probably always encountered has dealt with some form of abuse, or whether it be verbal, physical, emotional abuse from some type of man. So for me, it's just opened my eyes to how much it's not dealt with when it's so massive. Like I said, almost every woman that I've encountered has dealt with some form of some male or female that has inflicted this on them.
So we all know that domestic violence, it has different levels of domestic violence. It comes in different levels, like sexual, Ryan, you said emotional, physical. It also includes economical and financial also. So how it affects how it's affected myself, just in the terms of um, knowing at the stage that my sister lost her life was over an amount of money. That's an economical hold that someone had over her at that point. So it's shown me a lot of different values in life, of what people would take for granted. Um, I know that the statistics are not exactly true when you get in a circle of women. Um, Possibly 7 out of 7 women or 10 out of 10 women have actually um, ventured into some sort of violence or have witnessed some sort of violence. So that includes them also. Um, so it affects everyone: family, friends, co-workers, anyone who's seen it, anyone who's known about it. If they know about it, they want to do something about it, and when they can't do something about it to help the victim, then they have that on on their mind also.
Have you guys had experiences where you're thinking about things that you may have missed, and how do you reconcile that now?
Before I got older and understood more, I felt that same thing. I felt, you know, angry because they didn't tell me. I felt angry because, as much as I would have to deal with when it came to my younger sister and her situation, she still would hide it until, it felt like it was too late. I mean, I would even feel now that, she would feel this far along that I didn't protect her as a brother because I didn't do nothing, or she probably didn't tell me because she figured I wouldn't. So I don't really know at what point that I stopped feeling that way. I mean, even when it came to my older sister, I mean, we felt guilty because it's like we didn't know,
Right.
But again, we also understand that, like, every woman's not gonna tell you like that. Plus, she was strong. She was the type to be like, "I'll handle it. I'll handle it." So, we gave her that strength in that to be like, "All right, well, you handle it." But I still, as a male, we felt left out of it.
Yeah.
Both of my sisters. So
Yeah. And as a friend, it is very hard watching your friend, best friend, sister go through something like that. And a lot of times when I actually know multiple women that has been in this exact situation, they actually withdraw. Like they don't want to talk to you. Um, they actually grow closer to the person that is causing all the problems. So it's very hard. I guess patience. It takes a lot of patience being on the outside. And yes, there's been several times where I was mad at Jill or any of my other friends that may have went through this.
Mhm.
But it's just it takes patience and love, just staying there and not giving up on that person.
Yeah. We're talking about domestic violence. It is not just physical violence. It is toxic relationships that aren't necessarily man and woman. There are friendships that are very toxic and abusive. There are relationships with family that can be the same way. I want to talk about the different ways that domestic violence can show up in your life that you may not be aware of. And I think that's something that as a society, we really haven't talked about: toxicity in relationship as the root of where a lot of this comes from.
I didn't know I was in domestic violence relationship. I've been an enabler for a long time.
And it can happen in different environments as well. Work, perhaps,
I am
with
a victim.
undermining different sexes, discrimination, and that is an economical and financial hold on people. And the fear of losing their job, losing their occupation to survive. Um, like you said, it's sometimes everything starts at home. It depends on your history, on your family's history, and what you were seeing when you were a young child. What was allowed for you to believe be okay, or how to handle situations. Um, some people understand and they see that when they grow up, um, they're consistent with the way they were raised, and by continuing to be a perpetuator to someone else because that's all they know, or they release those traits and they want to be better and they don't want to conform to what was traditionally happening in their home.
Mhm. I think it involves a lot of not just power and control, but a lot of manipulation. And that is something that is experienced across the board. It's not necessarily these intimate romantic relationships that certain things like this can happen. Have you guys also experienced forms of abuse or manipulation or been involved with assisting people um, who have been in these kind of toxic relationships? And how do you advise people on removing themselves?
Case, you may be friends with someone, you may be, like you said, their cousin or their close person, and that person is really just toxic to themselves. And so you end up trying to be there for them, to guide them along their way to get to a better path. And in the midst of that, they take on, you owe me this, you're supposed to be here for me. And then the relationship becomes bonded, like you are responsible for them. And then at that point, when you don't conform to what they want you to do or how they want to keep using you, then it turns, and then they do things to hurt you. Sometimes physical, sometimes emotional, verbal, financial, all of those across the board. So this is where I try to get people to know that domestic violence is not just between two people who are partners. It can be between anybody. It can be your mother. It can be your grandparents. Sometimes it is sexual abuse too. We don't want to address that. Watching someone go through saying is that there's all kinds of ways. It's not just someone you're involved with. That person who you are really trying to take on as your friend to help them. When you don't conform to them, they turn it around and then it comes back to you. Then they want to make themselves a victim. They want to do whatever it is to make your life low where theirs is. And so that's just another form of abuse when we're talking about domestic violence.
When the victims are in fear of leaving and they feel that they don't have anyone because of everyone's either lost patience or they have their own lives to tend to, then that's when they, like Shonda noted, they get closer to the perpetuator because they feel that that person is their safety. They're the only one there for them because they've been manipulated into believing that no one else is there for them. So it just goes to show that narcissistic people, not just narcissistic people, but it thrives from that core mental state of wanting to gain control, whether it's mentally, physically, like we said, sexually, or financially over the person, just to kind of isolate them from everyone, to leave them alone so that everyone gives up on them and they're right back to square one.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just speak on this because I feel like I have to. During these years of me going around speaking about what domestic violence was, there was a point to where quietly to myself, and I had to look at myself, that I became back into that situation. At first, it was my anger that took over, and I wanted to be the one that was in control. But in that, it turned into me subduing myself, subduing my intelligence, subduing what I know what to do to say. Someone constantly telling me, "You're doing too much. Stand down, stand back. Let me take care of this." And then before you know that, that person is taking their power away. You no longer feel strong enough to go out and speak because they're constantly saying to you, "How dare you go out and speak on something that you are in?" And the biggest thing is that if you are in it, your biggest power is being able to break out and speak out about it. The main thing is
exposure. Exposure, I think, is the magic key.
Exactly. And then you'll be quiet because, sometimes at this point, whether it is your partner, your spouse, your girlfriend, your friend, whatever, they want to say, "Oh, when you say something, I got this on you." And in my case, there was actually someone out there just speaking all kind of stuff. Some of it may have been true, but it was not their story to tell about me and to get people turned against me for that reason. So I shunned myself. I stopped going out speaking. I stopped going to the different political events and stuff because I felt, I can't speak on this anymore. But until I decided the last time, I went back several times trying to make it work because it's Well, it's something you did. And at that point, I decided I just could never go back. I could never go back. I actually took a step to do some things that I never had done before and left. So that's just to say, anyone, no matter what your situation is, no matter if you've done something bad or even if you've done something good, sometimes just knowing your own facts of what you're telling other people and take accountance of that and take acceptability.
And I think ripping the veil off of that shame, you know, a lot of reasons of why women or victims don't speak is that shame. And it's always perpetuated as something is wrong with you, not the person who did the abuse. Women or victims are coming out and being very bold in what's happening with them. Social media and all this stuff, you start seeing this blame placed on the victim. Well, what did you do? And why did, X, Y, and Z, particularly by men. Ryan, it's very rare to see men, particularly Black men, stand up and advocate for domestic violence victims and survivors. What would you tell men specifically about victim shaming and operating out of a place of ignorance?
I mean, that goes a bunch of different ways. One way is to call it for what it is. You are being, very narcissistic in something I had just mentioned about, what's called in domestic violence gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an insecurity that allows for, even at a level when you're caught and when you're guilty, you're still trying to place blame, in a narcissistic way to say, well, if I'm so abusive, then why are you with me? Or if I'm so wrong, then why would you even be with me? So using that to still place blame, and all it is, a man not being a man. And a lot of this is about being able to look in the mirror and either like what you see or don't like what you see. And a lot of men don't like what they see. And these things, they come out on women. So to be like to be the one who's blaming, like I said, a lot of this that they're doing it in hiding. They're doing it to the woman and saying it, in their personal conversations. They can't even go and say it to somebody from the outside who would be calling them out. They won't be saying, well, why she with me then? They saying it to them because they know they can still manipulate the woman in that conversation, in that vulnerability. I think the purpose of awareness is because, unfortunately, it's a lot of men that you can't change. Awareness will allow for, for it to be seen, and we help upbring men, but it's harder to change damaged men than it is to grow up damaged boys. So, a man who's done that and who's doing that, no matter what you tell him to make him aware of, unfortunately, he's not gonna change his ways that he's setting in. That's how he is. The awareness will just allow for them to be on the spotlight and be seen as, this is what you do, you are wrong, and you can either change or you suffer the consequences of it. And then, like I said, the awareness will allow for, the knowledge to know that this starts in the home. This starts with the lack of this. And maybe that'll help you upbring young men as something different, as opposed to just blaming it on something else for what you lacked growing up.
If I could add to that real quick, I just are caught up in situations because there are children involved. So when there are children involved, sometimes that perpetrator will use the children against the other person. Like either you can't see them, or they'll take them away, or they'll hurt them. My family has seen firsthand where that is true. The imminent threat became real. To realize if there's a child involved, you may have to leave sometimes for your safety. That child will still have a live parent, and then the other thing is that you have to follow your procedures. The temporary order of restraint it's a piece of paper, but it's a paper trail should that person actually have to go to jail for being arrested?
And I don't think a lot of us realize, the importance of establishing a paper trail, even though the system is very flawed as far as protecting people that have existing orders of protection. Each of you guys are doing things based on your experiences with domestic violence. How have you as a family healed? Or are you still healing? What has been the process as a family that you guys have gone through as far as really healing from an undescribable trauma?
We're still healing, Danielle.
We are still in the healing process, but
So my business is a women empowerment and girls mentoring organization. It's brand new. It became a non-for-profit organization in March officially. But it's a 501(c), which that became about in about June. So what it is it's for women in all type of situations, not just domestic violence. We have several programs, but we do have our domestic violence program, which is Jill is coordinator. She's our domestic violence coordinator. Our program is for all age groups, young, old, whoever. We are working to get linkage with several shelters around Chicago. We also have we will have several self-defense classes. We will have domestic violence roundtables, just meetings, whoever need our help. If there is a woman that just need help, just for whatever, we're here. We are based in Calumet City. The studio's in Calumet City, on Sibley. We actually have a domestic violence, self-awareness, self-defense class. It is called GIRL, which stands for Grow, Improvise, Rise, Live. It's called GIRL. Like I said, we are a 501(c) non-for-profit based in Calumet City.
Like I said, as a whole, as a family, and as a friends, it's always been family and friends. And that was the one thing that I always got from my daughter, because that's just how she felt.
That was the first thing. Danielle, do you remember Favor?
It was.
I do.
Okay, that was important, Mom, because that was the kickstart of you being an advocate for domestic violence before all of the senseless murders happening. We were focused on domestic violence acts, which was friends and families against violence. And that included a lot of Nova's close friends in her circle. I would think 5 or 6 women. And it gave us a platform to bring everybody together, whether it just be the friends or the family, just to, like we said, bring awareness to what was happening. It was an epidemic, I believe. We were losing a lot of women, a lot of to domestic violence, just murders, children and families. So that really helped to kickstart what our family wanted to push for in the future. But GIRL is helping and the Star Project is helping. So as long as we keep going, it's not unusual for people in a domestic violence situation to try to leave maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times before they actually get out of the cycle of abuse. So that's common. However, it's these organizations like we're speaking on that actually help every time that person comes back, and they don't give up on that person to actually help them find their self and find their path out of the cycle.
And I think even supporting survivors after the fact, I think, when we're talking about prevention and support, that is something in addition, because there are a lot of women who are out, but still not necessarily safe.
Building awareness, we also need to build communities of advocacy.
Yep.
But to have someone to be there for you as an advocate. So as we talk to our men as well, like what my son does, and like Rashonda, and you're when you're in a position of service, you have people that come to you as clients. You might be that only one person that notices that they need help or that they cry out to help. So many young women, so many people come to my son. I'm sure Rashonda in her role as a doctor may witness something that's going on. And you might be that one person's lifeline for them to step out and get help, or to have someone that they feel can be there to help.
Right. Right.
So that's the important roles of the people, like I say, for my daughter, for Dr. Rashonda, for Ryan, for myself to be, and for you. You know, just someone who may read this article will say, hey,
Right.
years later, every day, every second of the day, this happens. And every second of the day, someone needs help. And if they know the help is there, then I know that my daughter, my granddaughter's lives were not in vain.
Ryan, I think with, your success and visibility, I always say it's a blessing and a curse, and the fact that you made a decision to speak about your sister and her life and bring that to the table has probably opened the door for a lot of people who may not have been aware, but also the door to people who may have a lot of ignorant things to say. How do you manage that? Because it's such a personal issue.
Just overall knowing that there's a better result and there's a bigger end goal from what you're putting out. I never cared to talk about my sister or my family situation. It was hard for me to do it, and being on a platform and being in the light of doing it, I didn't want to do it. I'm not one who wants to exploit that. Some people are fine with it. Some people look for the sympathy and things. I'd rather just bottled it up back then. I also knew that as much as I wanted to reserve it, it was needed to be put out because it helps so many, so as much as I wanted to, as much as I wanted to reserve it, I knew that it would help many over time. I run into people all over the world that approach me with the notion of, their condolences for what my family has lost, but also it was something that they can relate to. People who tell you that hearing my sister's story is what gave them the stepping stone to step away from a similar situation. And if that's the result of it, then, then my sister didn't die in vain. So that's what allows for me to keep going and bypass anything that comes by negatively because, it helps somebody, or someone else can be in the same situation. Someone else's family can be at a loss or in peril after, 5 or 10 years later still because of that. So with the way it helps, I keep it going with knowing that that's doing something.
Would any of you guys like to add anything else as far as what you guys are doing individually or collectively to bring awareness to domestic violence?
It's more than just a month.
Amen to that.
It's something that needs to be tended to, and it shouldn't be as accepted as common as it is. It should be more directed towards protecting the people that are affected. I don't think awareness makes that happen. If you allowed for me to do what we would rather do, we would, team up and, have our own militia that will allow for us to go in houses, and, wreck shop how need be. I have brothers who are on the police force, and some of the worst things that they see is, because they have to go to these houses for all these domestic calls, and most times there's nothing they can really do.
Right. A lot of the laws that are in place now, they've actually improved, I would say. So the fact that advocates now, I'm in training for my domestic violence advocacy course right now, actually. So I'm like raw in the midst of learning more about how to how to hit the judicial and the legislative system, to help these laws stay intact for people who want to be protected, for people who don't know how to get help, and for people who are protected through the law. It doesn't stop there, so the law has to go farther, and keeping those people in jail, not letting them out further, and holding people accountable for what they've done. The perpetuators getting help also, so that they
Hmm.
don't continue on with what they did to someone else. Like my mom said, the community, um, they play victim shaming also, and it goes to show that we're losing our humane, we're losing the cause for being human. Um, we don't love each other. We don't care for each other as we should. So that community upbringing it has to get tighter in all the communities for women around the world to get help. Because if they can't feel safe in their community, they won't feel safe in their home. Where else is there for them to be other than being in depression, taking their life, or being in the hands of someone that could?
And that's where girl come into play. We are here. Where else could they be? They can be here. I will answer someone's phone call at 2 in the morning.
And we have hotlines that they can call if they need further assistance. Like she said, we have shelters for placement, um, and not just the domestic violence department and girl, but it takes them farther for fashion, for motherhood, for mentoring, fitness, like how to get your life back if you are particularly a survivor of domestic violence.
Have you guys as a family like addressed these, because there has to be anger, sadness, that pops up. It doesn't go away. You know what I mean? That kind of trauma doesn't go away. You just learn how to manage those triggers. How do you guys do that?
Right.
As a mother, number one, with prayer. That's my main thing. As you said, we years later, we're still managing. We're still trying to come out of just surviving. We through us helping people, it's still us that we have to look at each day in the mirror and say how it is. When everything happened to our family, like this is probably what I said over and over again, it felt like a nuclear bomb dropped in our family. So we had to each take back and take a look at ourselves, take the blame off ourselves, or see what it is that we could have helped with. And even now, our anger, I have triggers like a machine gun. And I'm saying that in the sense as it comes that way. And sometimes my kids may not get it. They're like, oh, mom, you're over the top. Mom, you're this. And it's just like it comes right back in. And my anger might not be just towards them, but it'll come back as like, if I had done this, I wouldn't be in this situation now. But it's about going forth, therapy if needed, uh, healing, exercising, someone getting a tattoo to be able to look at that tattoo every day and say, this is the reason why I have to keep surviving. Someone who decides they want to change their life away and be healthy, things like that. So I think as a whole, as a family, no matter how hard you think it is that we can't get along, we're never going to be family. We are literally all that we have to keep each other going, to us to be able to help other people.
Yeah.
It's my
This training course that I'm taking right now, I believe, Danielle, is helping me and opening my eyes of what I haven't taken account for. Um, from my childhood to now, I'm 31 with a son also, um, who has been part of a toxic relationship. So, uh, but in order not to stay in that oppression, um, I choose to learn more, not just about myself, but in the situation that I'm in or the situation that I was in, so that if I can help myself, then I could always help someone else. I can help my child, I can help my friends, I can help my family or a stranger. I'm usually always calling my family like, oh my God, I just stopped on the expressway and this couple was fighting. I had to turn around and get out. I didn't know if they had a gun or what, but I got the girl with me and she she needs help. I'm taking her home. So they're like, Jill, what are you doing? You don't know that. I'm like, but I couldn't just go past. You know, if I see something, I'm always one to say something without question.
That's taking on different now. Like, I think 10, 20 years ago to be looked at as,
Mind your
if you
business.
see something like that, just mind your business. But now it's too fragile. It's not about if I see a man hitting on a woman on the street. It's not about minding my business. And what most men should be thinking is, let me intervene, let me stop this, and then you can figure out what it is, and whatever has to happen from there can happen. So
Right.
it's different now. You know what I mean? Before it was that ain't my business. I don't know what they did. But now it's become too fragile with too much loss, or loss being too common. So we have to intervene. You have to do those type of things, Jill, safely. But you have to do that. It's just as crazy as the world is getting. You have to do that.
I'm still in that also. I get that trigger back to, well, if I could have helped if this was my sister and I could have helped her, then it probably could have saved her life. So if this was someone else's sister or daughter and someone sees this happening to them and they're helpless at the point, no matter what they did, they don't deserve to be beaten out in plain sight, then that, I don't know if it sits well with me, but it just like, I kind of jump into like overpilot.
I think we all can relate. I know I've done it. And, you guys all have kids. What is it that you want to teach future generations so we stop this cycle?
So if we can think back when Danielle, you and I, we were in school, still a little bit older than you, we were taught about, and my kids, they had the DARE program. We had officer friendly programs. We had the dentist into our school who taught us about teaching brushing our teeth correctly. So we start and implement these programs now, as young as kindergarten, teaching children what domestic violence is. They might see it at home with mommy, think it's normal, but if we teach them at a younger age how to arm themselves, how, if they know it, how to deal with it, how to get help, how to know to talk to somebody and not just keep internalize it and recycle the cycle.
My main thing that I would like to pass to the generation in the future is the truth and honesty will allow people to accept you more than portraying to be a different character than yourself. If you're honest with someone about what you're dealing with, what you're going through, it doesn't put a judgment on what type of person you are, but what type of person you want to be, because you're noticing and you're aware of the small flaws that you have that make you who you are. But you don't hold that accountable to gain power over someone else. It's plain and simple. And I don't, just to be honest to people. If we start being honest to people, then we won't hide so much of what's inside that people don't know about us, and it comes out later.
I appreciate and thank you guys so much for speaking very candidly with me.
I want to say thank you to my babies.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Danielle, for bringing us all together.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you for getting the message out.